Azusa Street Revival. William Joseph Seymour began life as the son of a recently freed slave in Centerville, Louisiana. The South was in transition following the war, but despite the liberation of slaves, the culture in the area was still really heavily steeped in class distinctions around 1870. And so because of this, Seymour was really used to the idea of rejection, and by the time he was in his early 20s, he'd had enough. He left the South and headed north to Indianapolis. By the time he had reached the age of 30, he had been saved and sanctified by a group known as the Evening Light Saints. This group believed that Jesus was coming back soon and that there would be a fresh outpouring of the Holy Spirit, a latter rain before all of that happened. Soon Seymour found himself back in the South, and it was then that he heard someone speaking in tongues for the very first time. When he heard this, he knew that he had to go up to this person and find out all about it. Well, he approached the woman, and she referred him to her former employer, Charles Fox Parham. Charles Fox Parham was a white preacher who ran a holiness Bible school called Bethel College in Topeka, Kansas. Soon after, Seymour headed to Topeka, Kansas to find Parham and to beg to be let into the school. Though Parham was a Ku Klux Klan sympathizer and didn't believe that black students should be let into his class, there was something about Seymour's zeal and his own perceived Christian duty that permitted him to let Seymour sit outside the class, outside, by an open window in a chair. And if it happened to rain, he allowed him to bring his chair into the hallway so that he may listen there. During that time, Seymour earnestly sought out the baptism of the Holy Spirit with no success. While studying, he continued to preach. During one such preaching, he was invited to a little storefront church on Santa Fe Avenue in California. He went. However, Sister Hutchins, the pastor of this church, didn't like some of his views on the second blessing and thought that his ideas of the Holy Spirit were a little bit much and even heretical. Those doors were soon closed to him. Undaunted, Seymour agreed to preach in a little home on Bonnie Brae Avenue. Several church members from the previous church came along to hear everything that Seymour had to say. Words of the meeting spread and the crowds grew. People came to hear a preacher who had never spoke tongues tell about the blessing that God would give and that he would come soon and all would have this special, unique gift. On April 9th, 1906, Edward Lee told Seymour that he had received a special vision. He said that the apostles had come to him and told him the secret for how to get tongues. The men prayed together, and then they headed off to the meeting. That night, the power fell on those who were assembled, and several, including William Joseph Seymour himself, received the gift, and he started speaking in the unknown tongues. News of the outpouring spread, and soon the little home on Bonnie Brae Avenue was just too small, and the weight of the crowd that was gathered on the porch outside of the home, broke the porch. They knew that they needed a place that was bigger. Seymour's Apostolic Faith Mission moved to an abandoned church building on 312 Azusa on Easter Saturday, April 14th, 1906. 4 days later, and 9 days after the first manifestation of tongues in their midst, the earth shook itself. A major earthquake had hit. As the ground shook beneath their feet, the lives of many who had ignored what Seymour had been saying about Jesus' imminent return and the latter rain were shaken. Daily services quickly filled up with both blacks and whites seeking salvation and the baptism of the Holy Spirit. News of the Azusa Street Revival soon began spreading and drawing people from across America and around the world. As many as 300 soon crowded into the 40 by 60 foot frame building. On occasion, that crowd doubled, forcing worshipers to crowd in the door and spill out around the building outside. Many who came to investigate the revival were themselves touched and received the Azusa Street blessing. The revival there continued for about 3 years, and many who came from there became the pioneers of the Pentecostal movement for the 20th century. Isn't that amazing?